Hey, Wendy, 2 weeks ago, Senator Pauline Hanson called for an inquiry into the use of puberty blockers on children. And incredibly, there's been opposition to that. Give us some insight here into what the developments are.
So her terms of reference were entirely reasonable. She wasn't even coming down from a biased position. She was saying there is a number of Australian children now, the number of Australian children going into gender clinics has skyrocketed, and gender clinics in Australia are continuing to prescribe puberty blockers, cross-sex hormones, and there's even a lot of even medical intervention in children's bodies, so cutting off healthy body parts in Australia, when globally this is completely the opposite to what's happening. So in countries such as UK, there's Finland, France and Sweden, these places, even UK, once they closed down the largest gender clinic, but the ethics of prescribing puberty blockers to children has been sharply curtailed in these countries, and yet in Australia we're continuing to do it. So Pauline Hanson called for an inquiry, and as you say, the ALP opposed it, the Greens opposed it, and there were some Liberals who opposed it. But again, I'm going to come in with the Pollyanna thing because it's a start. It's a start. To have a senator such as Pauline Hanson calling for an inquiry is just so good to see, and the fact that the majority of the Liberal senators did support it, again, is it's a start. And so, we had a petition calling for an inquiry, and it received over 28,000 signatures, which is very high for a federal parliament petition. And so we've also got psychiatrists, we've got so many people now saying we need an inquiry. I just feel like this is just one of those first chips at the rock, and that we will just keep chipping away and it will happen. So I'm very grateful to Senator Hanson and very grateful to the Liberals who supported it, and I just feel like this is a start.
You know, when you say there are countries like the UK, Finland, France and Sweden, they've curtailed the way they're doing anything like this with puberty blockers with teenagers. There's a certain element, isn't there, in Australia that says, well, let's ignore what goes on overseas. We need to make our own mistakes. But our own mistakes in Australia really involving the experimenting on our children. So really we ought to be learning from those mistakes, oughtn't we, Wendy?
Absolutely, because the children that we're experimenting on are some of the most vulnerable children you could actually find, because these children are experiencing a gender confusion. And let's face it, Neil, what child going through puberty and teenage years doesn't have some dissatisfaction about their body? And we are capitalising on that in one way and putting them through, as you say, this experimental program, and many of the children getting spat out at the other end are absolutely devastated with what they have done. And children are too young to decide on some of these life-changing medications that will leave them certainly unable to have children, many times with completely bodies that are completely dysmorphic to what they actually feel they are.